Hello everyone, my name is Kent Trammell and this is another tutorial from BlenderCookie.com. In this video I'll be walking you through the shading and lighting for this electric guitar. I'm using the official Blender 2.63 build and rendering with cycles. So let me walk you through this scene file that we have. We have two curtains here that have been simmed and also duplicated. They're not two separate curtains, but same curtain duplicated, and it's just to give us a little play in the background but not be too distracting. And so when we look in the camera that I have set up, you can see that there's a lot of the curtains that we don't see. And so it's unnecessary. It's going to bog down render time. And so what I'm going to do is dice these. And I've already done it. It's a waste of time just to show me dicing them. So I'm going to delete them and append what I've already diced. So just trying to save a little time. This could run longer than I want. Okay, so here we go. We've got them diced and they fit the camera view. You can't tell that they've been diced. So this guitar is it's an older guitar model that I built, and if you look at the wireframe, there could perhaps be some improvements, but this will work great for this project. For anyone who cares, it's a Les Paul Custom with some onboard effects. That's why there's some extra knobs back here behind the bridge. And I actually own this guitar. I built this guitar a couple years back, so it's a good project because I have the reference right here, and it should be pretty accurate. So first thing we're going to do is set up the lights for this scene, and I'm going to first just create a material and just call it test. This will be a gray value Lambert style material. To give us a good idea of what our values are, for our lights at a mid-level gray. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is add a plane. I'm going to call this key or light key. No, actually, I'm just going to call it light 000. That's going to be our first light. And let's move it around here, and we're going to scale it up and move it back quite a bit. I'm going to add a new material for this. We're going to call it emit A. I'm expecting a couple different emit value materials. I'm going to turn it all the way up to white. This is going to be very much a studio setting or light setup. So just white lights for this one, and we want to change it to emission, and let's make the value let's just 10 for whatever. So now I'm going to change my UI to allow for a small render preview window. Oops. And change this. I'm going to split it, and then I should probably turn on my screencast keys while I'm remembering it. Okay, so turn it to the 3D view, hit 0 to get your well, that's annoying, it's shown twice. Anyway, so get the render window set up the way you want it, and this is what we'll be rendering. It's a smaller window, so it won't be as taxing on our machine, and it should go quicker, hopefully. So I'm going to switch it now to rendered. And none of the objects have smoothing. They're built for smooth, but I don't have smoothing on. Again, it's paused. Let's turn that off. So I don't have smoothing on so that this will go faster. I remember this. And problem is I have radius or depth of field on. Okay. So let's bump up this light to say about 30. Yeah, that'll be fine. And that's going to be our key light essentially. I'm going to duplicate that plane, rotate it, and so there's pretty much one key light, and these other planes are mainly, you're only going to notice them in the reflections. So this is going to be a different style emission that's less powerful. So I'm going to duplicate the material and call it emit B, and yeah, this is going to be significantly less powerful because the main purpose is to show up in reflections. And we're going to position it something like that. And so it shouldn't change the lighting a whole lot. Let's just test it if we turn it down. Well, it's affecting it a little bit. But anyway, to see this, what the reflections are doing, we might as well add a different test material. So I'm going to split the window, change it to Node Editor, and duplicate this material to test 01, and change the diffuse color to a much darker. I'll just turn it to black. And then we're going to add another shader, Glossy BSDF, and add Mix Shader, and change the roughness to 0.001 because that's going to be the value later. Okay, so we can see the reflections are pretty strong, a little too strong. Well, let's change the factor down to what is it? Is it 0.15, I believe, is what we'll use it as. And that doesn't seem to be, okay, it's just really, really a bright light. So I'm going to change this from 10 to 1. Yeah, that's going to be more like what we want. But I have a specific type of, if we go back to the reference, or what I've rendered earlier, there's a specific type of reflections I want. I want this backside to have this nice big reflection, and then the top to have this other, like, I don't know, boot style reflection sort of shape. So thanks to Cycles and its pseudo real-time rendering, I can sort of get an idea of what it's going to do. As you can see in the render window, we can see what we're getting at. So that's about what I want it to do on the reflections in the back. I'm going to duplicate this again and now try to achieve the reflection on the top half of the guitar. So let's change it to medium point for the pivot, and let's just move it around till we sort of see, where is it? Trying to move it into position to show up in that reflection, and it is just not wanting to for some reason. Let's see, what do I have to do? Oh. What is the deal? Hold on. Okay. That's better. Man, where is this thing? Oh, there it is. It's showing up now. Okay, that's pretty much what I want. And I'm going to scale this in the 3D cursor out so it will get it further away from the guitar and not interfere. And let's try and get that shape back. Voila. That's what we want. I'm going to add one more light. Well, it's really a reflection plane. It's technically giving off light, but it's very low powered. And this one is going to be, let's just scale it. Well, yeah. What I want this one to do is show up. I want it to show up along the fretboard and a little bit of the, there we go. Okay, as you can see in the render window, I'm going to move it further back and move it in X, and you can see in the render window that it's popping up. But I want it to show more on the fretboard, which is not doing for me. So I'm going to just position it to try and show up on the fretboard. There we go. That's more like it. Okay, so I want to show up on the fretboard and on the headstock just a little bit. So we're going to leave it like that. The reflections are good, the way I want them. So lighting is essentially done. So I'm going to, let's see, make sure it looks fine with the test material again. Just move it to update the window, and yeah, I think this lighting is going to work fine. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, so now we can start making the materials. I'm going to first create the cloth material for these background cloths, drapes, I guess. And let me find my notes. Okay, so these are extremely simple to set up. I'm going to delete that material, add a new material, call it cloth black. And we're going to change the diffuse BSDF to velvet. This material is it's pretty fancy and it's pretty cool. I'm going to just change it to black and leave the sigma almost to black, a value of about 0.1, and yeah, that's fine. And put on the other material. Oops. Control L, link materials, move it to update, and that's not right. Cloth black. Cloth black. Okay. So as you can see in the render window, the preview window, let me just move it up, the value up a little bit so we can see what's going on a little better. It looks to me like silk. That gives a very silky kind of feel, which is not what I'm going for 100%. I want it to be more of a matte finish on this cloth, velvety, which is kind of misleading because to me this is, I don't know, perhaps more proper, more accurate velvet, but it looks more like silk to me. So I'm going to change this back down to a darker value, and then kind of put this off to the side for now. Going to, oops, not duplicate. Going to add a diffuse BSDF, and then I'm also going to add, let's see, input layer weight. It's going to be where this starts from. Then we're going to add a color ramp in converter color ramp, and finally a color mix node. And it's going to be an add blend type. We're going to connect the facing output to the factor for the color ramp and the color into the factor for the add. So we're going to change this top color to, we're going to pick the same as this velvet BSDF. And then the second color we're going to move down in value, still the same grayscale as the first color. Whoops. Let's turn the saturation down, off actually. And yeah, so sort of around well, value less than 0.1, maybe about 0.1. Okay, and set this, plug this into the diffuse color, and finally the color into the surface, cut that connection, and oh yes, let's go back to the color ramp, and what this is going to do is do like kind of a fake, as if the materials that are cloth that has fine furriness. What is the word for it? It's just furry, basically. Like it starts to, as the Fresnel, starts to, the surface faces away from you, you see a white shimmer from the furriness. I guess. Wow, I'm really explaining that poorly. But that's what I'm sort of faking with this color ramp. It's a common method. It's also, I've heard it called a fall off shader, whatever. So I'm going to change this interpolation type to ease. I'm going to add a point in the middle, change that point, lower it in value a little bit, and move that to the right, move the black extreme a little bit to the right, and let this render, and we get more of of what I would call like a velvet material. It's very matte, but it's got this white edge from the fur that we see built up as it faces away from us. So that's, I feel like I explained that really poorly, but anyway, that's how I set the shader up, and this is more of a matte finish, but just because the velvet shader is so cool, I'm going to mix them just for the heck of it, and I'm going to do an add. What's going on? Oh, I'm sorry. I set it up in a color mix instead of a mix shader. So let's set that back up, and there we go. So yeah, we've got this nice little cloth velvet sort of mix. Anyway, that's going to be fine. And so the cloth material, we're going to call that finished. And next, let's go through the guitar parts and start to create those materials. First material I'm going to do is the strings, and it is very simple. It's we're just going to call it metal strings, and going to add a mix shader, and then also a glossy shader, glossy BSDF. We're going to, let's see, change the diffuse color almost to black, a very dark gray, and change the factor to 0.9, and the roughness of the glossy to 0.001, and the color of it to white. And this will essentially almost a chrome material. Okay, so that's going to be it. You can't, the strings aren't too big of a deal. We're not going to see them very much, but that's a fine, that will work fine for the strings. Now let's go on to the hardware. Wait, here we go. So this hardware, and they're all named properly. If we go into the guitar group, I call it a guitar group, but it's just an empty with the guitar pieces parented under it. Yeah, so we've got body, hardware, nut, pearl pieces, and strings, and all these will have different materials. So for this hardware, we're going to almost do the same thing as the strings. So actually, I'm going to assign the metal strings and then duplicate that, and this is going to be called metal gold. And we're going to change the diffuse color all the way to black. Actually, it's, I don't think this is a good practice. It's probably not completely accurate, but I'm going to actually remove the diffuse and the mix shader and just leave it glossy BSDF and change the color to, let's zoom in here so we can see what it's doing. I'm going to change this glossy BSDF color, reflection color, to sort of yellow, orange, basically gold color, and that's gonna, yeah, it's gonna give us very simply the gold look. It's incredibly easy to set up metal shaders in Cycles, so that'll be fine for now. That's very simple. Again, I try and keep the practice of keeping it more accurate, where we've got Lambert or a diffuse shading with a glossy mixed on top, but for now I'm just going to leave it like this, and for this tutorial I'm going to leave it like that. So that's the hardware covered. Now we need to add these mother of pearl pieces. So I'm going to delete the test shader, add a new one, call it MOP for mother of pearl, and the diffuse BSDF, well, let me look at my notes how this is set up exactly. So we're going to start with the diffuse and change the color, basically keep the value where it's at, and then move it slightly into the yellowy orange direction, just slightly. And then we're going to add a glossy BSDF and also add a mix shader. Mix these two with a value, leave it at 0.5, and the color will change to white, and the roughness will I'm going to change it to 0.1. Yeah, 0.1. And then we're going to add a translucent BSDF. Translucent BSDF, mix shader again. Plug that up, and translucent shader, we're going to change the color again. We're going to just color pick from the diffuse, and we're going to mix the shader at 0.6. And let's go over here and zoom in on what that's doing. That's not enough for me. What's different? 0.5. Let's just move the translucent value all the way up. Maybe the BSDF is too dark. It's not particularly what I want. 0.5. Okay, well basically the problem that's bumping me is it's too dark. It needs to be brighter. So let's change the mix value to, what about 0.8? No, it's not doing it. Why is it? Maybe the light's too dark. Maybe I need to bump up the light. Let's go up to our initial light, which is sort of like the key light, and let's change it to, just double it to 60. What's that do for us? That's more like what I want. I don't think my settings are set up very good yet. Okay, I always just change the bounces to max of 2, min of 1. We've got no caustics and no shadows. That's fine. Okay, I guess this is, yeah, this is correct. So it just looks a little different from the last time I did it. But anyway, we can. That's what the shader is. That's set up properly. And again, tweak this to your heart's desire, of course. And is that everything? Nut. I need to do the nut first. Okay, so for the nut, we're going to go back to its materials, delete the test, material, add another one, and we're going to add a shader glossy diffuse, or I mean, sorry, glossy BSDF, shader mix shader. I might stop saying that because it happens all the time for these shaders. So yeah, you know what I'm doing. Let's change we'll put the roughness at 0.05, well, 0.1. And the mix value we're going to change to 0.1. We want it mainly diffuse, not very shiny. And color, again, I'm going to move slightly to the yellow-orange side of the color wheel. And that's going to be fine. I think the recording software is taking, screen capture software is taking a bit of my computer power, but this is going to be fine. I'm actually going to change this back to test 01. Okay, yeah, reflections are still good. Okay, so now we get to the fun, more complex part of this tutorial. Okay, so now we are ready for the guitar body shader, which is going to get pretty messy, a little complex. But okay, so let's remove the test shader. Let's add a new one and call this guitar body. And I don't think I've been naming my materials. Yeah, I haven't. Guitar nut. Let's see, mother of pearl. We've got guitar strings, hardware. Metal gold. Okay, I think everything is named now. Cool. Okay, so back to the guitar body. Let's I need to look at this one. This one confuses me trying to re-explain it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is create a input texture coordinate, and all of our textures are going to come from the UV texture coordinate. So let's add a texture, image texture, and I'm going to name it or just color, and then open our texture. Let my hard drive catch up. And I need to save this pretty bad. Let's go through these textures and I'll explain them right after I save it. Tarbin 02. Okay, saved, and I'm going to pause this render. It's just scaring me, maybe too much for Blender to handle right now. So I'm going to split this window down here and open the UV image editor. This is where I'm going to explain these textures that I'm using. So let's open guitar color, and it's just the color of this guitar. We've got a sort of aqua sunburst on the front face, and then a mahogany body with maple trim, and then a couple mother of pearl inlays for decoration. But the maple is all quilted and figured, and I'll try and explain that a little better later. So that's the color. We're going to duplicate this node and call it mask A. And we're going to open another texture, mask A, and let's review that. So this is, I did this tutorial first and tried to create materials like the reflection color, specular amount, all the standard kind of the way I've always done it. And then using cycles, I kind of figure, for me, it's easier to section off the different parts of the model that have different shader qualities. So that's what I'm doing here. It's just a pure RGB texture for different parts. So the green here is the fretboard, the blue is the mother of pearl inlay, and the red is all wood that's going to have the same shader values, shader quality, I guess. So then I've got another mask that I'm going to use. Duplicate that, mask B, and open another texture, mask B. And let's review that one. And same kind of thing. The way the guitar is finished is you have, and the way I'm going to set up the shader is the first layer is going to be just diffuse with specularity, and then there's going to be a high gloss finish at the end that is exactly what it is. It's a high gloss finish that you clear coat that you paint on the guitar in certain areas. So here in green is going to be the pure high gloss, and the red is going to be the high gloss but with a matte finish, more of a matte finish. And then the blue here is the fretboard, and then one of the pickup holes, and that's going to not have any of the high gloss on there. And then so let's duplicate the material, the image texture node one more time, and this is going to be AO, and let's open that, and that is actually exactly what it sounds like. I have baked out the AO for this guitar, but I'm not going to use it as a multiply. AO is kind of a weird thing for me. It's sort of a bad approximation, in my opinion, of global illumination because it only gives you the dark areas. I know it's kind of used all the time, but I'm going to use it for different purposes, and I'm going to use it to well, I'll just save that for later because that's kind of fun to explain. So I'm going to save it. It's just a bake of the AO into a texture, and so then I'm going to plug up my UV output for the texture coordinate to all my textures. And first thing we're going to address is it's going to get pretty big, so I'm going to move this out. And the first thing I'm going to address is the diffuse, the raw diffuse of the guitar. So let's first I'll just plug it into the color, and we got to unpause the render window, let everything build the BVH build, and okay, right away. What's nice about rendering something like a guitar is you can get away with almost just a texture. Like it's so there's so much detail in the texture that you can have a texture, the diffuse texture, and then a simple high gloss on top of it, and you can get away with that. But I'm going to try and push it a little further and go further with the shader and add some extra details that would be actually more correct if the guitar was rotating and if you saw motion in this render, but we're just going to render a final image. But anyway, so here we go. It almost looks fine. Real quick, I'm going to lower the value of the cloth real quick. I think it's a little too gray in my opinion. And lower this. Okay, whatever. Back to the guitar body. The first thing I'm going to do with this is desaturate a little bit. So let's go to color, add a hue, saturation, I'm going to change the saturation to 0.9. 0.9. Okay, so we've got that plugged up, and that's pretty simple. That's all for the diffuse. And now we're going to add a mix shader. Mix shader. And now we're going to add the specular component to the lowest layer, just the pure wood in our guitar. Okay. Still need to spread this out. It's going to get big, little spider webby. So, okay. First thing to do is add another hue saturation. We're going to duplicate this, and let's see. The goal that I'm shooting for now is the color, the specular color. So I'm going to rename this glossy to spec color. No, just spec, I'm sorry. Now we're going to the specs color. So I'm going to plug in this to the color, and yeah, okay. So we're basically going to use the diffuse color in the specularity, and this is going to add a wood quality. It's also, if you do metal, it can sort of start to look like metal if it's not done properly. So now I've got this set up. I'm actually going to start to use these masks. Whoops. Yeah, so to set up the mask, I'm going to add a converter separate RGB, and this is going to give us white and black value from our RGB channels, and this is exactly what super useful for this method. So to give you, I'm also going to little scatterbrain, I'm sorry. I'm going to add a diffuse BSDF down here, and this is going to be simply to show you, or to remind myself, and also to show you what's happening with each part. So here, when I set up or plug in the blue channel, we can see that it's pure black except for where the mother of pearl inlay is. And then likewise, plugging in the green channel, it's just the fretboard. So let's see, let me look at my shader, my finish shader real quick. Okay, so to get this this color right, the spec color right, I'm going to plug in the blue channel from mask B into the factor for this hue and saturation. Let me get rid of that, it gives a little more room. And then I'm going to add a color mix node. So bear with me, I'm going to have to create this, just set it up, and then show you what it's doing, and explain it after I've set it up. So I'm really just going to copy my finished version and then explain it after it's finished copying. After I've finished copying. So I'm going to add another mix down here, change it to, whoops, let's cut that. Change it to multiply. Plug in this blue value from mask A into the factor. Change the B from mask B into color 1, and then change this to black. And this is going to be plugged into the factor for this mix. And now, so let's just take a look at what that's doing, what that's actually going to look like. And okay, so see here, the fretboard is now is more of a white color. Oh, that's right. I know what I need to do. I'm actually now going to finish this off. I'm going to come into the AO, and let's see. We're going to add an invert for one thing, because we want the darker areas to be white. To be a value of 1, we're going to add a brightness contrast, and change the contrast to 1. And then now when I plug that in so we can see what it's doing, here's our AO. I remember now. So we've got the cloth set up. I'm going to hide it. It's just bogging down the render. So let's speed this up a bit. Yeah, it's more like it. I'm going to hide those for now. And here we can see that all the white areas are our AO. And what I'm using it for in this tutorial for the guitar is, if you play guitar at all, you know that in the crevices of everywhere across the guitar, because your hand's playing it, you get a lot of dust gathered in here. And just to add another level of realism, I want this guitar to be used a little bit, not fresh out of the factory. I'm going to have dust gather in these areas, and this is wonderful. It's going to be very subtle, but it's going to just add that extra hint of realism. And it's great because, again, if you play guitar, you know that this is where dust gathers, like precisely where dust gathers. So now I'm going to use this in the spec color to specifically on the fretboard to add a little bit of dust around the frets. So we've got that set up. I'm going to now add let's see, a mix node. This is going to be an add. I'm going to move the AO to the factor. Factor. And then change this to black. First color to black, second color to a mid-level gray. And we're going to plug this. Where's this go? Okay, it goes into the secondary color of this mix node up here. So now when we see what's going on with this, there we go. And so in the spec we want very little, actually no spec for the fingerboard. It's a very matte finish on the fingerboard itself, but if we look closely, thanks to the AO, we now have some subtle dust gathering in between the frets and also below the strings, and that won't show up a ton. It's just enough to add a little bit to the final render. So we're going to plug that now into the spec color, and let's plug back up our shader. Let's get rid of that. Testing diffuse. Okay, so again, if we get in close down here, I think I can up that level a little bit. Yeah, we just start to get some very subtle dust gathering up in here, and that's going to be great. Okay, so let's get back in here, and now the next thing to address is the roughness of our spec. And this is going to be different. For example, we want the mother of pearl inlays to have a different spec value. That it's very shiny, but the wood is going to not be as shiny. So let's set that up now. Let's start to minimize some of these nodes to save space and not be quite so weird or cluttered in there. 1 second, let me check my notes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do for this is, again, we're going to go back to the guitar color, and we're going to add a mix node, color mix, and this is going to, man, I need to organize this a little bit better. I'm going to try and leave the color nodes up here together, and then make a little bit more room on the bottom half of this window, or this area, for the roughness. So let's take the color value and plug the guitar color, plug it into color 2, and this is going to just be a plain mix. We're going to take the R value from mask, the red value from mask A, and plug that into the factor, and then add another mix node, and it's going to just stay a mix. We're going to add the color from our previous mix node, put it into color 1, and then the factor is going to be the blue value from mask B, and I'm going to plug that into the factor. And now the value of the second color we're going to change to black. And what this is going to do is, well, let's check. Let's plug it into our testing diffuse to see what it's doing. Let's see. Oh, that's right. Okay. So we're not going to leave it at black. We're going to actually put it at, 1 second, let me check. We're going to put it in 0.01. It's almost black. 0.01. That's going to be the value of the rough value of our mother of pearl inlays. So here in the image, we can see that this white on the fretboard, no, it's not white, it's a very low value actually, or a lower value in gray. And that's going to be the roughness value for our fretboard, which is going to be very, very matte, not a lot of, or it's more glossy instead of shiny. And then the dark areas here are going to be a higher shine value. So that's what this combination is doing. We're going to double check that that's all we have. Yes, and that is going to go into the roughness. So let's plug that back in, cut these, and yeah, so that's what, now our spec is finished. I apologize if this is a little hard to follow. I'm sure it is. Oops. But it's just a complex shader. I want to show you how you can make this a little more complex and use all the nodes with fewer textures. Or the factor values in the nodes and use them maybe cleverly, hopefully. Anyway, so this is the, you can also see here in the mother of pearl inlays that from where we set up our reflection planes, you can see that up here towards the top of the neck, it's we don't have a lot of value, not a lot of reflection, but then as we get down here where the plane is reflecting, we see a little bit of shine. And that's what we want. If this were to be moving, you would see that the mother of pearl inlays is shinier than the wood underneath it, and definitely the shinier than the fretboard. So that's what we want, and the reflection in the wood itself is going to be good. You know, there's not a ton of it, but it's just going to have a little bit more color from that wood, and it's going to help accentuate the figured quality of the wood without getting too complex with that. Okay, so the last thing to do, we're rounding third base on this shader. Okay, so the next thing to do is add the high gloss finish. So we're going to Shift A, add shader glossy BSDF, and we're going to name it just high gloss. And okay. So for this high gloss shader, we're going to add a mix node, color mix, move this out of the way, and this is going to be a multiply, because with this node we're going to cut out the fingerboard entirely from the high gloss. So if we go back, let's load up our mask B. This is meant for the high gloss, so we can see the blue value is what we want to cut out. So if we take the blue value as the factor, now this will, we can change the color 1 to all the way white so that it will be in the high gloss, and then change value 2, or the color 2 to all the way to black, and that will completely cut out our fingerboard from the reflection of the high gloss. So let's just test it, and so I can prove it. Here we go. So all the white has reflection. If you look in the render preview, all the white is going to be perfectly reflected, and then the black on the fingerboard will not be reflected at all. So let's plug that into the color of the high gloss, and let's see. Now let's duplicate this add node, this add mix, and plug in the AO into the factor. And 1 second, let me check these values of the colors. And okay, so yeah, the first value is going to be 0.001, and this is going to be what we want the high gloss roughness to be. The second value is going to be 0.5. It's going to be much more rough, and for those values, it's going to be where the dust is gathered, and it's going to shine. It's going to be the same reflection color, but it's going to be much more rough. And so when we plug this in, let's plug it in to test just to see what it looks like. No, that's not right. That's not supposed to go into the... Oh, okay, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. So again, this is the AO, and where it's dark, that's going to be completely shiny. Where it's white is going to be not so shiny. And this is going to work out great. Well, okay, we got to plug it into the roughness. And right away we see, yeah. Oh, okay. So right away we can see that where the reflection is happening. And then if we zoom in, you can see that where the reflection plane is hitting square on is almost all white, and then in the AO areas we can see it's more gray, and that's because it's a rougher value. But then also where the reflection plane is not seen in this black area, it's still showing up a little bit around the AO of these the tuner keys, and this is just a great subtle effect. It's more realistic because where dust gathers, it's less shiny, and so that's going to work out really nice. So let's go back to the node editor and let's add a shader mix shader. Let's mix our diffuse and spec in with our high gloss. Plug that there. Okay, and this value is going to be 0.15. And okay, so let's take a look at this now. We have our high gloss reflection on there, our clear coat on the guitar body, and down here. But then when we zoom in, we can see where dust has gathered and tainted the reflection a little bit, softened the reflection. So this is pretty good. Right away, I think that I can actually add a little bit more value to the value to emit B, because it's a little bit dark. So let's bump that up to 2, and actually I'm going to change this value to 0.1, the mix of the high gloss. Yeah, let's change that to 0.1, take it a little down, and yeah, this guitar is now completed, and so we've got all our shaders working properly, and we can now unhide our curtains and get an idea, because we are pretty much ready. We're ready to do a final render. So let's just wait for this. Oh, there's one more thing I need to do. Okay, so that's not too bad. Yeah, I think yeah. Okay, cool. So the last thing I want to do, just to add a little bit of camera quality to the render, is we're going to add a little bit of depth of field, a very little bit. You might not even be able to see it in the preview, but anyway, let's add an empty, and then I'm going to move it to where the first pickup is, right where the neck meets the body. Yeah, I'm going to leave it right there, and we're going to call this DOF focus. And now when we click on the camera, go down to depth of field, and we're going to change the focus to depth of field focus. Choose our empty object. And now for the radius, we'll start at 0.2, and bear in mind that this will make your render go a little slower, but we'll let it kind of do its thing, and pretty quickly you can see that where the headstock is, it's very blurry, and which we want to see a slight depth of field effect, but we also don't want all the hard work we just put into our model to now be blurry for this specific angle. We don't want a steep depth of field, so that's too much, and we're going to change it now to point. Let me check what it actually is. Okay, we're going to change it to 0.05, actually, 0.05. So at this point, I know that this is the value that I want to stick with, and you're not going to see it in the preview. You're only going to see it in the final render, and even still, it's quite subtle. But it just more than depth of field on the guitar, I want to see it on the background curtains. I want those to start to blur out more. So at this point, our render is set up, it's done, everything has shaders on it the way we want, the lighting is set up, and we just need to render a big version. So I'm going to pause and render a big version. Okay, so this is the final render. It took about 36 minutes to complete, and the settings are 1920 by 1080 are the dimensions. The render samples are 500. The max bounces are at 2, min bounce at 1, and the light paths are their default values, 128, all of them. And let's see, also there's a subsurface modifier applied to all the geometry at level 2 for render time. So I'm going to do a little bit of post-process now, a little bit of compositing. So I rendered this at 1920 by 1080 with the intention of scaling it down by half. If you've ever used Cycles, you know that noise is a common problem, and so by rendering it twice the size of my final output image, I'll be able to shrink it down, which will eliminate a lot of the noise, and also I'm going to add a lens distortion and a little bit of noise on top, and all of that will eliminate the noise from Cycles. So let's go down to the compositor nodes, and let's first add a lens distortion, distort lens distortion, and the dispersion amount is going to be 0.02. And we're going to change this to the viewer node, and we can see a little bit of chromatic aberration from the lens distortion happening. Now we're going to distort scale this by 0.5. Cool. And already the noise is starting to disappear, but just to cover all of it up and to make it to give the image an overall more photographic look, we're going to add, well, first we need to create a texture. So I'm going to go to Blender, Render, and go to Texture, and I'm just going to add a new one in the world. It doesn't matter where it's at, and we're going to call it Noise Overlay. And by default, it's a noise clouds texture, which is actually what we want. We're going to change it to color instead of grayscale and move the size down to 0.002. Okay, so now go back into the compositing nodes, add an input texture, and let's pick our noise overlay, and then add a color mix. And let's mix the color, make sure it's the color, not the value. And it's going to be an overlay as the blend type. And now we can see that we've got noise popping up in our image. It's a little too much, so I'm going to change it to 0.5 as the mix value. And there we go. Now we have a final image with a little bit of post-processing. The noise from Cycles is almost entirely eliminated and definitely not noticeable. But yeah, so this is it, and I appreciate you watching this. Hope you learned something, and yeah, thanks for watching.